Let's talk to Dan Hodges, who is, of course, our man at the Mail on Sunday. Dan, a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
So, according to Victoria Atkins, the Labour government are running scared of talking to farmers. I mean, Steve Reid's going to go and address them at the NFU conference today, but he's not going to tell them he's sorry. He's not going to tell them they're going to change their policy, is he? He's going to carry on unfettered.
No, he's not going to say that. And I think one of the reasons is actually, I mean, speaking to ministers and MPs, I don't think the government are running scared of the farmers at the moment. I think there are a lot of issues around that the general public are very angry about. I mean, obviously, you've been touching on rising energy bills, which are obviously a very serious problem. We've had some really, over the last couple of days, we've had some bad economic figures. I think that's concerning people. Obviously, the cut, we're starting to get out the winter now, but the cuts to winter fuel were obviously something that has really, really damaged the government. I've got to be honest, I don't think the farmers' protests and the farmers' campaign is really catching fire at the moment. I don't think it's something that I think there's a sort of a general sympathy, I suppose, amongst the voters, but I don't think it's something that the government feels they're under a huge amount of pressure on at the moment, if I'm completely honest.
They may not, but I mean, again, like everything else that we talk about, it's not just about one thing anymore, is it? It's about all sorts of things. It's about the fact that everywhere you look, there is a pressure point, and whether or not the farmers are at the top of that tree, they're certainly on it, and so everywhere you turn, I mean, I don't think there is one cabinet minister in one cabinet government department who could say that they've got everything under control and everything's going really, really well. I mean, if you, for example, and I started doing a bit of this on Monday, ask people what they did last week and what they achieved, you might not get very many good answers coming back from any government ministers.
Well, maybe. I hope you're not getting on the Elon.
Well, the funniest one was I had a Tory. I don't get Labour MPs. I don't come on, but I had a Tory MP on, and I said, "Can you tell me what you achieved last week?" Just as apropos to Elon Musk's question, and he went, "Oh, well, actually, I was off for a few days." I went, "It's not really the answer I was looking for, but it was half term."
No, you don't want to be asking that one to Kemi Badenoch, do you? I mean, I think that.
Well, not really. No. Well, I mean, I don't think any politician right now, apart from anybody in Reform, would actually be able to say anything about what they'd achieved.
Well, no, I'd actually disagree. I think Reform have an absolute shocker at the moment, to be perfectly honest. I mean, we saw last week, if you'd have asked Reform MPs last week, what have you done? They'd have had to have said, well, we spent half the week going to ground because we've had the rug pulled out from under us by Donald Trump, and we're scrabbling around to justify. Well, yeah,
except for the fact that they've managed to recruit thousands more members, though. So I mean, they're actually growing as a party, which is what they're really doing at the moment. It's not their fault. It's not their fault they're the de facto opposition.
Yeah, they're certainly getting a lot of members, and if you remember, what was it that what happened to the Labour Party under Jeremy Corbyn? I mean, remember that? I remember, Jeremy Corbyn is athletics running around pointing to their mass membership lists, and it was absolutely right. Labour's membership under Jeremy Corbyn
but half the people on that list had paid £5 from Conservative Party central office to join it, so they could make Jeremy Corbyn the leader. So I mean, that's why they had so many people in it.
Yeah, well, I reckon a lot of those people have now jumped over from the Tories to Reform as well, to be perfectly honest. No, I mean, I think, I think the big issue, obviously, at the moment, and maybe we'll come on to that, is obviously the politics has been dominated over the last week by Trump and Ukraine, and Reform have been found badly wanting on that.
But I think everybody has. I mean, I know you've been very forceful in your view that Keir Starmer's played a blinder. I'm not sure I agree, because I was talking to Andrew Neil earlier, and he agreed with me that Europe right now seems completely irrelevant to what is going on in the world. We've got Emmanuel Macron desperately trying to show that he's going to be a much better boy now that Donald Trump's told Europe to get their act together and start spending more money on defence. He's like, we're going to step up to the plate, or whatever he says in his accent. He's going to do more for Europe, and Europe is now sort of bending to the will of Donald Trump. Keir Starmer is not in any way, shape or form going to go to the White House with a strong message to tell Trump to do what he wants, is he?
Well, I think he is, and I think, I completely disagree. I mean, I think, you're saying Europe's irrelevant. I mean, we saw, obviously, Trump Well, I mean, Trump obviously felt it was necessary to sit down with Macron yesterday. As you said, he's going to sit down with Starmer late this week. That doesn't indicate that he, at the moment, sees Europe as completely
Well, yeah,
irrelevant.
but he's sitting down with them because they've asked for meetings in the same way that that you and I would sit down with Emmanuel Macron if he rang you up and said, "Can I come and talk to you?" You'd go, "Yeah, all right then."
Yeah, I don't think Donald Trump is the sort of person who just lets anybody bowl up into the Oval Office. It didn't strike me as...
Well, he had the Polish Prime Minister there a couple of days before.
Well, exactly, and that's further evidence that actually he does think Europe is relevant. I mean, the other thing is obviously that, I mean, you said about Macron bending the knee. I mean, what was fascinating in the meeting yesterday is Macron didn't bend the knee, and Macron very openly, and I think Trump seemed quite shocked because Trump's not used to this sort of treatment. Macron, sitting in the Oval Office right next to him, literally put his hand on him and said, "No, you're wrong."
Yeah.
And I think we're starting to see that now. And I think, Keir Starmer will, I think, possibly try and be a little bit more diplomatic. But the reality is Keir Starmer has also been very clear and is very clearly delivering a very different message to Trump. He's saying, quite clearly Russia are the aggressors.
Yeah, but Trump's getting on with it without needing to talk to these characters. This is my point. I mean, Macron can do whatever he likes and put his hand on his arm and say, "No, you're wrong." Trump's not going to pay any attention to him. Trump's already said he's invited Zelensky to come and see him in Washington, which he will do. He's already said he'll probably go to see Putin if he wants to go over to Russia. The fact that Macron says anything is completely and utterly irrelevant. There is nothing that Europe can do to stop Donald Trump from doing anything.
Well, look, Donald Trump can obviously pursue his foreign policy and is pursuing it, as we saw yesterday. The US lined up with North Korea alongside Russia to veto a UN resolution saying Russia was to try and veto a UN resolution or vote against the resolution saying Russia was to blame for the invasion. But right. America lost that vote. Right. So, yeah, Trump is obviously pursuing a very different independent foreign policy. But as we can see with Macron and with Starmer and the rest of Europe is basically starting to say, OK, if you're going to go your own way, fine, we're going to go a different way. And as I say, I think that's good. And I think that's good. I think we do need to stand on our own 2 feet now. And I think most importantly, people do need to start turning around to Donald Trump and saying to his face, "Look, you're wrong." And as I said, as we saw yesterday, it's not something that he's used to. It's not something he likes. It's not something his supporters like. And every time anybody...
He looked pretty happy yesterday with old Macron, didn't he?
Yeah, I don't think he looked that happy when Macron was telling him he was wrong. I think he was a little bit put out by it. But that's the new reality. Trump's been clear. Trump's acolytes have been very clear. The days where the United States was one of our major allies in standing up to people like Putin are over. So we're going to have to learn to stand up to people like Putin on our own, and maybe that's...
But except again, that's not quite right, because he is standing up to Putin. He is actually solving the problem, and that's why Europe is less relevant, because he's bringing...
Please. He's standing up to Putin. He literally
no, hang on.
with that Vladimir.
Dan, you're falling into the trap. No, Dan, you're falling into the trap. You think that he's giving Putin everything he wants. You don't know what he's giving Putin because the deal has not yet been done. The beginning of the conversation started because Donald Trump is in the White House, right? Before that, there was no conversation. Biden didn't have a conversation with anybody because he was fast asleep and pretty much horizontal through most of the 4 years he was in charge. So now you've got a guy who's actually doing something. I'm not going to sit here and say that everything he does is right because I don't know what he's doing, and nobody does. But what he is doing is making sure that the war will at some point or other in the very near future come to an end.
We don't know what he's doing. We do know what he's doing.
No, you don't.
Yes, we do. Yesterday...
All right, well, last week, hang on, last week, last week, all you lefties were going on about how he's selling out Vladimir Zelensky, he's selling out Ukraine, he's giving Putin everything he wants. This week, he's not doing that. This week, he's inviting Zelensky to come to Washington. This week, Zelensky's offering to step down in order to get peace. And he's also saying there might be some kind of deal on the table for the sale of Ukraine's minerals. So the story moves all the time.
Right. He said, like I said, yesterday, he literally voted in the United Nations with Putin.
Yeah.
He sat down with talks with Putin, not with Ukraine.
What does that mean?
That means he's siding with Vladimir Putin.
No, it doesn't. No. I mean, that's such a naive point of view.
All
It
right,
doesn't
then.
mean
Well,
that. Do you really think? Do you seriously think that voting in the UN means a fag end? It doesn't.
Okay, Mike. Okay, Mike. Let's test. Okay, Mike. Let's test this. Donald Trump said Vladimir Putin was a dictator. Donald Trump said Ukraine was to blame for the war. Donald Trump has been asked, does he think
He said Zelensky was a dictator.
Zelensky. Donald Trump.
You're getting confused now, Dan.
Donald Trump was then asked, do you think Vladimir Putin's a dictator? Wouldn't or couldn't answer.
Yeah.
He said, do you think Russia was to blame for the war? Wouldn't or couldn't answer.
Yeah.
What does that tell you?
It tells me that Trump is playing you like a fiddle. Because you're going, oh look,
the 4D chess. It's the 4D chess, is it?
It must be proof. Yeah, it must be
right.
proof that Donald Trump is a Russian, agent. It's not a proof of anything.
Absolutely right. I completely agree. As I literally said this yesterday, we know for certain he's not a Russian agent because no Russian agent would be this stupid.
Yeah,
no Russian agent would be this.
But that's the point.
They try and keep their. They try and keep.
Exactly. So think about that.
Blatantly pro-Putin.
Right. So think about what you've just said, and then think about the consequences of what you've just said. And what you've actually said is that Trump is doing the exact opposite of somebody who would be a Russian agent. Therefore, he's not a Russian agent. Therefore, he's actually sucking into Russia in order to get a peace deal of some kind, which you don't know the end result will be, and neither do I. But what I can tell you is that he's not an idiot, right? And he must know that people like you will be writing him off and saying, look what he's doing. You know, look how he's being more friendly to Russia. He's already moved the dial on the peace talks. He's already talking to Zelensky. Zelensky's already talking to him. You know, we're getting there. That's the point.
Mike, if Joe Biden or anyone else over the last 3 years had wanted to capitulate to Putin and stab Ukraine in the back, they could have done it at any time. The fact is they didn't want to. Trump does want to. Trump's been very clear.
No, Trump wants to end the war.
People like you are running around trying to sort of rationalise what he's doing. Justify what he's doing.
No,
it's very obvious.
What I'm saying to you,
been like this
Dan,
all his life.
Dan, listen, I will make a bet with you.
He openly said he's a fan of Putin.
I will make a bet with you right now. You know, if you don't like the way that the war is settled, you can come back to me and say, I don't like the way the war is settled. I think Trump gave too much to Putin. I guarantee you that won't happen right now.
Right. So you think Trump will force Putin to withdraw from Ukraine?
I think Trump will force a deal with Putin.
No. That's not what I said. That's not what I said.
Well, I'm not going to second guess what the conditions are likely to be. I don't know what the conditions are likely to be.
What would you like a deal to be, Mike? You said to me, you'll come back if you don't like the deal. Fine. I'll tell you what I wouldn't like. I don't want any deal in which Putin holds on to any of the ground that he secured.
So you'd be quite happy for more Ukrainians to die because you don't want a deal for peace.
Mike, no one is happy.
You want them to keep fighting, then, do you?
Mike, no one's happy. This is just stupid.
Well, it is
no
stupid.
one is happy.
That's why we shouldn't be having
the reason why Ukrainians are dying. The reason why Ukrainians
are they dying?
They're dying because a whole load of Russians marched into their country and started killing them.
Okay. So what do you want to do to stop that? The
President of the United States.
So what do you want to do to stop that?
Scared to acknowledge that.
What do you want to do to stop that?
What we're going to do to stop that is what we've been doing to stop that. We're going to stand with.
We haven't been stopping
not
it.
Stab them in the back. No. Like Donald Trump wants to.
No, because you're letting people die because you don't want to give up any kind of ground to Putin, right? You don't want to give any kind of quarter to somebody who has invaded the country.
Right. Fine, well, let's reverse it. You do want to give ground to Putin.
It's not. First of all, it's not my ground to give, right? But what I want to see.
It's not my ground to give either. You're asking me what I want as a settlement to the war. What do you want as a settlement to the war?
Well, I don't. It's not for me to say, but I think it would be a good idea.
Why is it for me to say, but not you to say?
Well, because you're the one that's very vociferous about it. You're the one that seems to know exactly what you think Ukraine should be doing, and you seem to be very willing. You seem to be very willing to put people on the fire for your honour, so that you can write about it in the paper on a Sunday.
Mike, you asked me what I thought a solution would be. I'm telling you. Now I'm asking you, what do you think the fair solution is?
Well, I wouldn't be arrogant enough to answer that because what you're doing is you're sitting there and you're waiting for Donald Trump to tell you what a good deal is, and then when he does it, you will say Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump's done it, it's a good deal. Not at all. Absolute rubbish.
Fine. Then what do you want? Fine. Then what do you want as a deal?
Well, it's not what I want is a deal. It's what I think a
Come
deal
on,
would
mate.
be.
Straight
Right?
talk. Come on, mate. Straight talking.
It's
Home of
what.
common sense.
Well,
What do you think
well,
the
it is the
common
home of
sense
common
is
sense.
in
All
the
right, you want
UK?
the home of common sense. The home of common sense would suggest that if you want to stop a war, right, you negotiate the end of a war. That's what usually happens, right? And when you negotiate the end of a war, you find out exactly what you can get in return for something being given to you, right? Now, at the moment, you've got a situation where Putin is still killing people and Ukraine is not winning in any way, shape or form in any part of that world, right? So what you would do is you would say to Vladimir Putin, you know, how much will it be for you to stop fighting in this war? How much would you need
Right.
for us to make
Exactly.
you stop, right?
Thank you.
And then
Thank you.
you listen,
Exactly.
and then you
Exactly.
hang on. You haven't
Exactly.
heard the end of it yet. You see, jumping the gun again. Then you would see, right, if what he says is acceptable or not acceptable, and then you go from there. I don't know where the end result is. All I know is I don't think it's right for people in Western Europe to continue to demand that Ukrainians continue to die in order to defend a part of Ukraine, which in fact many people who live there think is part of Russia.
Right, mate. But
Right?
you're telling us what you don't want, but what do you want? What do you think?
Well, I'll
a
tell you what I
fair
want.
deal
All right,
is?
Let's get back down to brass tacks. What I do want is for us to stop spending British taxpayers' money propping up the Zelensky regime fighting a Russian army that they can't win. I don't want to keep giving billions and billions of pounds to them, which Keir Starmer seems to think is a great idea. And he thought it was a even better idea until Donald Trump told him it wasn't.
Mike, sorry, again, you keep saying what you don't want. What do you think that you've been sort of very articulate about? There's a war taking place. It has to stop. Fine. On what terms do you want it to stop? I've been very clear. I don't want the war to stop on any basis.
You don't want the war to stop.
I don't want the war to stop on any basis that allows Putin to retain the land that he is illegally seized. Because not because I want the war to continue, because if he does that, he'll do it again.
I don't think so. I think there are ways.
You don't think so,
I think
Mike?
there are ways.
So what do you think?
Well, I
Fine.
think.
So what do you think the solution should look like?
If you let me answer you, I think there are ways of containing Putin. All right, and if it means that you have to give him a little sliver of land in order to contain him and stop him from ever doing it again, then maybe that is the price that you have to pay.
So you think the way to stop him from seizing land is to give him land?
Yes, I do.
Right. So you think the way to stop
Yes,
Putin?
I do.
Think,
Have you never had a neighbour? Have you never had a dispute with your neighbour?
I can't. So you think the way to say to convince Putin not to seize land in the future is to say we'll give you the land you've just seized now?
No, you'll give him some of it, and I think that's not
Right.
as irrational as you're trying to make it out to be.
Right.
know?
So appease him. Appease
No.
Vladimir.
Well, not
Reward
appease him.
him.
No,
For his
not appease him. Control him. I've always said it's much easier to control your enemies if they're close to you, as opposed to having them on the outside.
control him by giving him what he wants.
No, that's not the point. It's not. It's more nuanced than that, Dan. You should know that. It's not.
So
It's not black and white, is it?
It is black and white. Vladimir Putin invaded another sovereign country.
Yeah.
Now, he cannot be allowed to retain those gains because if he is, he's going to do it again.
What did you say? What did you say when he invaded? When he invaded it? What did you say when he invaded it in 2014? Did you say that then? When he was appeased?
We should have stood up to him in 2014.
Right.
What happened when in 2014 we did exactly what you're saying we should do now? What happened in 2014
Yeah,
when
because it wasn't done right. Because it was ignored. It was not. There was no deal struck. It was just he was just allowed to do what he wanted to do. But I'm being told I have to go now because I'm winning. Apparently, it's already the game's already over according to my producer. Anyway, listen, good to talk to you, Dad. We'll keep going with it. One of these days you'll understand what I mean. I think he's been deliberately obtuse, quite frankly. I'll send him a free bumper sticker. The home of common sense, he can put it on the back of his larder, whatever he drives.